Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining today's webinar. We'll get started in just a minute here. I'll just let a few more folks get themselves connected. All right, so we'll get started with the preamble here. So today's webinar in our series here that we've been doing for about 7 or 8 months now, today's webinar is going to be on registration reporting in Goalline, and we are going to have a brief look, not directly into a real portal, but we will take a quick look at how you do some of this reporting in your StackPay merchant portal if you are taking online registrations with StackPay payments. Quick note on the housekeeping stuff. You do not have any audio, but there is a chat. And so if you have any questions or anything throughout the webinar, feel free to throw your questions into the chat and I will either answer it as we go along, or if I know we're going to come to it, we'll get to it later. If there's anything that is still sort of pressing or you still have questions at the end of the webinar, I'll try to remind you again of all the different ways to reach out to our support team so that we can get you those answers. What's the next thing I want to mention? So I'm going to be using a demo site here today. So there's all kinds of sort of wonky and fake demonstration data that we're going to be covering. But I think it should be fairly easy to kind of relate that to what you're going to see in your own systems there. And the other thing that I'll mention is that I am not going to be covering how we create registration forms in this webinar. I have done that in other webinars for both creating individual forms for like players, coaches, and referees, as well as a separate webinar on team registration. And so if you have questions on how to get started with setting up registration, I encourage you to check those out. Those webinars are going to be available on our faq.goalline.ca webinars listing, and you can register to watch any of the previously recorded webinars. Today's webinar will also be recorded, so if you either couldn't have made it or you can't stay the whole time, or if there's someone else in your organization that should also watch, you can feel free to send the link along and they can register and watch the replay. So we're using my familiar demo site here that I see a lot of familiar names on the list here, so I'm sure a lot of you have seen this before. We're going to log in using the admin login and take yourself to your admin control panel. The basic foundation of registration reporting is kind of important to understand, and that's why I mentioned that I'm not covering how to actually build registration forms, but we will take a quick look at where the foundation of this reporting is going to come from. So registration searching and reporting is going to be based on your registration forms and the associated programs that you add to those forms. When you prepare your forms, you're collecting information about the person, and I'll just hop in here. So I'll go to individual registration forms and we'll just do a quick look at our options here. So I'll edit this form here to just take a look at it. I have to say okay because it's published right now. So the person information is what we're going to be collecting on step one. So some basic form information, as well as what about the person is it that I want to know? And that's going to include things like extra questions that you might be asking that isn't necessarily something that Goalline has as a standard piece of information. So whenever you're looking to collect information, you're going to set that up on step one, and that those extra questions will become relevant down the road when we want to see the answers to those questions as we're reporting. The programs that you can register for are going to be set up on step two. So all the programs and products that I can buy on this form are set up on step two. And the breakdown that I use on this step is going to directly relate to how robust my reporting is going to be able to be. So this particular form is it's designed for players to sign up for March break camps, and so any of the options that I give you to sign up for my camps are what I want to have as separate programs. Generally, we recommend that you use separate programs for participants with different ages and genders and possibly skill levels. And it's specifically required that if the program has a different price, that it does have to be a separate program. I wouldn't be able to have just one program and then charge some people $200 and charge other people $300. I do need to make sure that each price point is set up as its own separate program in here. Most youth organizations would have a separate program for each age category that you have available. Even if the price is the same, that breakdown is going to allow you to report on each of your age categories separately later. You are able to report on an entire form's worth of registrations, and there are some other filters that will allow you to do things like, restrict based on the age or gender of the person who registered. But setting up your programs like that to begin with just gives you that extra level of more robust reporting. Beyond that, within each program that you have available, there is a general ledger code that you can add to associate with each program. This is also available to associate with each product and each discount that you may offer. So having your separate programs set up allows you to set up that different general ledger code that will export with your transaction report that we'll look at later on in today's webinar. So setting up a single program does allow you to report on it, but setting up separate programs just helps you to kind of differentiate more easily. And there's going to be some summary information that's really useful and nice to have as well. So now that we've looked at where we go to set up these programs, how am I actually going to report on registrations that have occurred? So we'll keep using players here, and I'm going to go out to the people section. And to report specifically on registrations, I want to use the person search for that type of person. There are other ways for you to search on things in Goalline. There is a search for find people, and this search does allow you to search for all of the different person types in one single search. And there is some ability to add registration criteria to your search. The reason that it's not generally recommended to use the find people search as a registration specific reporting tool is because you can't customize the information that you get in your displayed results. You won't have summary information for your programs, and there's not the ability to email from these search results. So each registration form is dedicated to a certain person type. So it's recommended that you go directly to that find person type. So in this case, we'll use find athletes. In your system, this is probably labeled as find player. So we're going to click on here. We'll go into find athletes. And then I'm going to just skip right past all of this criteria here and go right down to the registration information, because that's really what we're looking at right now. The registration information section is going to allow me to search on whatever form it is that I want. And all these different criteria are available. So perhaps there's a payment due date that I want to search specifically on, so I can email people who have a payment that's due on a specific date. If I happen to have set up payment categories, I may have some categories that I also want to have displayed. My from and to date range is going to mean that my results will include any registrations that occurred within this specific date range. And then, of course, the payment types, general ledger code options, and other products and discounts that may have been selected. So I'm going to locate my registration form in my list of forms that I have available. I have organizations tied in to my organization. So essentially, my organization serves as a governing body to other sites. And when that's the case for you, I know there's several folks here in the webinar today who would have this same structure as well. If I want to search on a registration form that wasn't created here at my site, it was actually created at one of the sites that I govern, I can do that as well by just selecting that. It will break down and show me the title of the organization, and I can see all of those registration forms as well. I'm interested right now in showing my March break camps. You know what? That's a great question. So there's a question in the chat from Donna. Is there any way not to have the archive forms show up in the registration form you are searching? So Not right now, but that is something that we've sort of struggled with how to do that without removing forms that you may still want to get information from. As you know, when you're creating and editing registration forms, you can archive them so that they're no longer shown in your list. They're not published anymore. They're archived for the purpose of all of the data is still there for you to report on, but they're not kind of in your face when you're dealing with your registration forms list. Your registration form dropdown in the registration search will always include all forms that have ever really been active on your site. If the form had a registration, it will be shown in the registration form dropdown. So every single player registration form that I've created on my demo site is shown here, unless I have specifically permanently deleted it, which is not recommended when you have actual data associated with them. So archived forms will always show in this list. We are going to take that suggestion, though, to look at how can we make it so that that list is not so overwhelming when you're looking at things, and especially if you've been with Goalline for a really long time, you may have dozens and dozens of forms to look through. So that's a great question. Right now, you will see all of your forms listed here, and they are currently going to be listed in alphabetical order in this view. I'll hop really quickly to click on try the new search. The new search is, it will eventually be the default, but we're taking a look at some of the aesthetic issues that we have going on in here. With the new search, the first thing I do is I'm going to select the organization that I want, and then it's going to show me the registration forms that are available. And the new search actually puts your most recently used form at the top, which is it's still showing you all of the archived forms, but your new form is at the top, which does tend to make it a little bit easier for you to locate when you are doing your registration search. So I'll point that out. But for right now, archived forms will show up in there, which is actually, that's certainly one of the features that we enjoy about Goalline registration, is that you're always able to search on historical information. I can go back to 2016, or not sure if I have forms back from 2012. I think I do on my referee search for when this site was created. Yeah, I'm going to select my March Break Camps form to search. And what it's going to do is it's going to show me each and every program that was listed there. And that's why that relationship with setting up your programs appropriately is going to make a big difference for how you can report here, because I may want to know just how many people registered. And I can do that by saying just select all of these programs and go ahead and do my search. But maybe I really only care about who signed up for a full day, or maybe I only care about who signed up for half days. And so I can do a search that only includes one program. If I have a dozen programs, I can search on half of them, or any combination thereof. And so I'm going to select my registration types here, and these are how I want to be able to break down my reporting. So when you've got, U11, U13, U15, having that breakdown of how many people signed up in each one of those categories, it's just really good high-level information, and we'll see the summary data that will come from that. Because I am in this search view, I do want to make sure that I open up my search date range, because I'm not sure when people may have registered. So I'm going to go back to say maybe if it was published in December, I want to make sure that I go back to say December 1st. My little trick is that I always just go and change it to several years ago. And the reason that this is a great little trick is because I know that I'm now going to capture all the registrations that occurred on this form, because I know that this form could not have been open for more than a year. Registration forms are only going to be valid for a year. And so when I open this from date range to 2016, I know that none of the registrations occurred back then. And so I know that this date range is going to capture all of them. So that's kind of my quick trick, is I just pick a different year, and then I go ahead with my search, knowing that I'm going to capture every single one of those registrations. So then we're going to go and click to search the athletes here. And the only criteria I've selected is my form, my date range, and all of the programs here. And so I can see the registrations that have occurred. There have been 4 registrations in total, 1 of them for half day and 3 of them for the full day. And so what's great about this is the registration summary information that I get here is kind of twofold. One is my overall, just how many registrations occurred, how many people were part of those registrations, and then I can see my summary as well. So the summary is going to show a line for each program that has registration data associated with it, and that's going to show you the total owed and the total paid for that specific program, and the number of registrations and participants. We can also see in here the maximum number of registrations. So one of my programs had a maximum, and so if I was getting into waitlist territory, this is how I would know whether or not my programs are getting full. Once they are full and I've selected wait lists, then we would be able to look at wait lists. Excuse me, there is sometimes going to be a difference between the number of registrations and the number of people, because one person may register more than once. Goalline does not restrict a registrant from registering more than once, and depending on what your form is having them register for, that may or may not make sense. So it may not make sense for you to have more people registered or more registrations than the number of people, but depending on what it's for, like summer camps might be something. If you have multiple weeks, somebody might sign up for 2 or 3 of them and then come back later and say, oh, you know what, we decided we're going to do a couple more weeks of camps. Same participant, so one person with more than one registration. So that's how those numbers do tend to sometimes get a little bit different from each other. If you're using our association-wide product feature, which most of you are, and if you're not yet, that is something that I'll encourage you to reach out and get done with us. I'm going to go back up here and take a look at our website option. So when I say association-wide products, you are able to create products outside of a registration form and then associate them with registration forms. So this is great if you have something like a hat or a t-shirt that you sell as an organization. You don't need to create the product on each and every registration form when you've created it as an association-wide product here. So I can create any of the products that I may want to add to my forms. This also lets me create universal discounts that I can apply to specific registration forms. So I've got a bunch of products here. I've got some discounts here. And then as I build my form, instead of creating the product on the form, I'm just going to apply my product to the form. The benefit of using our association-wide products is that when you are searching on those products, you'll also receive a summary of those products. I don't have any sold on this particular one, but the summary information would also include a summary of the products that you've sold, which is great at a glance information for you to know, I'm going to have to fulfill 87 orders of red hats or blue t-shirts or whatever it is that you happen to be selling. So our search results show to us here in our overall summary, our program breakdown summary, and then our details. The details are the actual participants who have registered. So my player information that's here of the people who have actually registered for these programs. By default, we're seeing the basic results. So we see the basic Goalline information and what they registered for, and a little bit of their registration information as far as their registered date, status, paid and owed, and that kind of thing. There may be other information that you want to see. So for example, those answers to extra questions that I hinted at earlier. You will want to select to display additional person details in that case. So if I scroll back up here, there's an option up here to show additional person details. When I select this, it doesn't change. It's not a criteria that's going to change my search results. But if I search my athletes now, I'm going to get my same exact results that we were just looking at, but I will see more details as I look at the actual detailed results below. So this is driven by a feature called Edit player info displayed. There is such a feature for coaches, registrants, volunteers, and officials as well. And the way we access that is going to be through the people section. So if I want the details, such as the answers to extra questions that I asked at the time of registration, or I just want to know maybe your parent name or your parent email address, your jersey number, your position, any of these things that I may be asking, I may want to customize my results. There's two ways I can customize what shows up in my search results. The first way is going to be to click here that it says customize this list. When I click on this, it's taking me directly to the feature for edit player info displayed. The column that we're concerned about is going to be our athlete search column. So when I click to show additional person details, everything that is checked off in this column is what will display. So I won't see comments, I won't see phone number, but I will see current team. I will see the parent's first, middle, or first and last name. And I can scroll down and I will start to see the extra fields that are available for each and every one of the registration forms that I have for players. This will also include any parent extra field questions that you may have asked. So the volunteering questions and things like that. So if I want to see all of these details, then I'm going to check off that I want to see these details. I generally recommend, and this would be noted in our preparing for play and our registration webinars, I generally recommend that as you get ready for your new season and you perform those kind of maintenance tasks of rolling your season forward, copying and archiving your registration forms to prepare them for an upcoming season, that you also hop in to edit player info displayed to say, I no longer want to see the 2017 information. I no longer want to see the 2016 information. I want to see the information relevant to 2021 or 2020, whichever season label you use for this particular time of year. On the cusp is always hard. And there's so many 20s that I'm just going to probably say 21 for the rest of the webinar. So as you prepare for your new season, you do want to make sure that you're setting up that you want to display the new current information and no longer seeing last year's answers, because last year's answers aren't relevant anymore. So that's one way for us to access edit player info displayed. The other way is just going to be going directly to it from the people section. So in the people section here, I will have, it's in here somewhere, there we go, edit athlete info displayed. And you're going to see that there's edit registrant info displayed. For coaches, there's going to be edit coach info displayed. For referees, you'll see the same thing. And so you can customize the information that you see when you click to edit, to show additional person details. So just hopping back in here, if I click to show additional person details before I perform the same search, I am going to get those results right from the get-go. What I see in my exports when I export the information is going to be directly exactly what I see on the screen. So there are multiple options for what can I do now that I'm seeing search results. The obvious ones are I can email folks. So I can email the players or the parents or both. I generally recommend, especially with youth organizations, that you select both. And when you select both, you're going to make sure that if the player's email is actually the parent's email, or maybe there's multiple email addresses in a profile, because the player, parent 1 and parent 2 can also can all have a different email address. So clicking to email all just ensures that you're going to be catching the registration and sending them an email. When I select this, it's going to bring up all of the people that it's going to be able to email, and I can email those recipients and just type up my email and send. Which is great. As you know, there is definitely an email announcement tool. There's lots of different places in the system for you to go ahead and send emails. Sending from search results is just really targeted because you might want to be communicating with them, hey, now that you've signed up for our March break camp, here's the stuff you need to bring. Make sure you bring a towel and sunscreen and bug spray or whatever it is that you want to tell them to bring when they come, or whatever other reason you may have for sending them that email. Your export options are going to be to export your summary information, which would export the registration type breakdown here. The exporting the details is going to export you the information found below. So exporting details gives me my actual results of each individual person, and my summary is going to be my program breakdown, which would show me how many people are expected at each of these programs. So that is how we get a registration search. I'm going to just do a quick look again at the new search. The new search is great. One of the things that's a little bit different about the new search compared to the old search, or we'll say the current default search, is the results are going to display for you a little bit faster in some cases. And the other kind of biggest difference, and as you can see here, this is the aesthetic issue that we're kind of sorting through. A few little aesthetic issues on there before we make that the new default search. But I'm just going to click the select all option in here. And down here, instead of having to locate that show additional person detail checkbox way up here, it's really close to the search button, which is nice because I know that when I go to search athletes, I see right here in front of me that it says basic information. Well, I don't want basic information. I want all of those additional person details. And so the fact that the option there, the setting there, is a little bit closer to the actual search button just makes it a little easier not to kind of forget about it. And we see the same kind of breakdown. So we see that total overall summary, the registration type breakdown, the details, and all the same options here as far as exporting and emailing. So there's no difference really in the functionality that we see there. It's just a little bit of a different method of doing that search. So I just wanted to point that one out as well. The other thing to point out, I guess, when it comes to registration searches is you will only see those forms in any of your lists if there's actually a registration there. So we do get that question every now and then. You know, I created a coach registration form, but it's not there for me to search. So if you come down here and you see that there is no form for you to search, it means there's not a single bit of data related to that form yet. And so as soon as someone has registered, it will display in the list. So if you're ever looking for a form that's not there, if no one's registered for it, it's not going to be shown there. The other thing to just look quickly at is I'm in coach search right now, and maybe I'm looking for a form that was actually for registrants or players or officials and so on. So just making sure you're in the appropriate person type before you go ahead and make your search. So that's the general registration search. The major benefits of using that search is obviously the detailed results that you get about the participant, the ability to click to view or edit the profile of each and every one of those registrants, and your ability to kind of see that total summary information at a glance. So as an organization, you know that you've taken in, 150 registrations and, 70 people still owe you X amount of dollars and that kind of thing. So it makes it nice and easy for you to get that information. Each time someone registers, we're not only accumulating that information in the registration search that we just looked at, all of this transaction information is going to be accumulated into your transaction details report. So the way we access that in the Goalline system is going to be, again, through people, and we'll go to the reporting subsection here, and we'll see transaction report. When I click on the transaction report, depending on the structure that you have as in your specific site, you may have an additional area over here. Right here, I have one that says registering region, but you may also have one that says receiving organization or receiving region. If you are an organization that does payment splitting through required membership purchases, you should have multiple boxes in here. And it's really just to say, I want to see transactions that happened here where the money went here. And so it's just a method for you to easily at a glance see how many split transactions may have happened and registrations that occurred, say, at a child site of yours where you received the funds because of a membership purchase or a split payment. For most organizations, this is a fairly simple report that's going to look similar to what I have here. I do have regions on my site. If you don't have regions, then you're just going to see the date range and the transaction date and your ability to go ahead and report. Regions are a feature that not all organizations have. Lots of Goalline sites do use them. They're great and have lots of different implications. If you think that regions might benefit you, absolutely don't hesitate to reach out to us, because we can talk about how regions might benefit you. The FAQ actually has a pretty good article that describes whether or not regions might be useful for you. So feel free to check that out and let us know if you're interested in that. There's no cost for us to enable the ability to use regions. And so if it's something that would benefit you, let us know. So now that we're looking at our transaction report, it's not just going to be specific to a registration form. I think that's something that's really important to remember. So the registration form that or the report that we just looked at was only giving us one form's worth of information, but the transaction report is going to have all transaction activity. So if you have multiple forms that are open, all of the transactions are going to be shown on this report. We're gonna so we've gone into our transaction report, and I'll try this date range, and we'll see if I have any transactions. And I'm just leaving my registering region as all. So I've got some transaction details in here. I've got 3 transactions. You will see up to 500 results on your results page. If there are more than 500 results, you will see paginated results, and so you may have 12 or 13 pages of results. If you do have paginated results, it's going to show you that, it's showing you page 1 of 10, showing results 1 through 500. When you export, you will be exporting all of the transactions. Excuse me. So your export will include all transactions relevant to the search you just did, not just the ones you see displayed on the screen in front of you. There are lots of details in this transaction report, and quite a few of them, to be honest, are probably not details that you're super interested in. The order ID and the reg ID, these are Goalline specific IDs that are associated with each registration that happens. The registration ID is a Goalline transaction ID. The order ID is actually going to represent line items. So as you can see here, I have a registration ID that is the same. I have 2 lines here that have the same registration ID, but they have different order IDs because there are different line items. One was my registration program, and one was a t-shirt that I purchased as part of the same transaction. So when we have transaction activity, your transaction details report is going to have a line that represents every single item that was purchased. And as we scroll over, we'll see some additional details in here. So we'll see what was the price. If you've charged tax, it will calculate what that tax amount was. If there is a specific quantity that may have been purchased, for the most part, this will always be 1. But if I was able to purchase maybe 2 hats or 2 t-shirts, then my quantity may show 2. The line total will be my price plus my tax and multiplied by whatever quantity I may have. And then if there are any discounts, those will be straight deductions from those line totals, and then show me my total transaction amount. As we scroll over even further, we're going to see some other information in here. And for those of you who have transitioned from using PayPal as a merchant processor to using StackPay, you're going to see it similar to what I see here, where we see a little bit of PayPal references and then also the StackPay references. If you don't yet have a StackPay merchant account, you may not see the StackPay references in here at this time. And again, if you don't have a StackPay merchant account and you need to take online payments, you'll need to get in touch with us because PayPal is no longer a payment option for registration forms on Goalline. So as we scroll over some more, we're going to start seeing some more details. Actually, let me just scroll right back for a second and talk about product name. So this is going to show me what was purchased. And so we're going to see at first the form name, and then the program name, and then the payment details line from that specific program. If it was a product, then it's just going to show me that was a product. And so that's what we see when we see the product name. This is going to be form name program name, and payment details line. These are sortable options, which is really helpful. I do this all the time to sort by certain things. So if I'm looking at my transaction report and I only care about the March break camps registration and I'm not interested in this 2020 player registration, I can sort all of my results so that I get them in that order and just kind of take a look at how many registrations and transactions occurred for that specific form type. So sorry, we'll go back over here. And there's going to be lots of reference numbers in here. Unfortunately, where I do have a demo site, I don't have live detailed information, but we can take a quick look at what you can expect to see in this report. The transaction report is going to show me the transaction specific information, including the gross amount of the StackPay transaction. When we have that 2-line option here where this was a program and a product, the StackPay gross amount is going to show here and not here because there's only one deposit. I'm only making one payment. And so as I see that gross amount go in, it's going to be the total of those two products. So how much did the registrant actually pay? When we see these transactions happen initially, you will see the StackPay gross amount go in here, but you won't see all of these other details immediately because there is a small settlement time between the registration occurring on Goalline, the payment being completed, and the funds settling onto the StackPay side of things. And then as that happens, StackPay is going to call back to Goalline and provide us with the rest of the details. So once StackPay gets back to Goalline, we'll have the StackPay transaction ID, which is going to be specifically to StackPay. We're also going to see what those StackPay fees were and what the net amount of that transaction is. The other two items that we see here for the batch number and deposit time, we will not see until later. We won't see the deposit time or the batch number until those funds have first settled into the StackPay account and then been batched into a deposit that now is in your bank account. So the batch number may not be there for a couple of days after a transaction, but once it's there, the batch number and the deposit time is going to be displayed here. And that's something that you're going to be able to reconcile directly against your reconciliation or batch deposit report that we'll take a quick look at least screenshots of when we look at StackPay later on. You can export this to a CSV, like I said, and sort it and kind of do whatever you need to here. The other couple of things that I'll note is that refunds will show up in here. Any offline registrations will show up in here. Any comments added at the time of taking a payment manually or providing a refund, removed transactions, all still display in your transaction details report. I have been asked in the past, why do removed transactions show up in here? Because they happened. So a removed transaction doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It means that it was removed if a person withdrew and that kind of thing. There's lots of reasons why you may want to remove it so that it no longer shows up in things like registration searches when you're trying to figure out how many people are signed up for my program. But it is still a transaction that happened, and therefore the transaction details report will always contain that. It will show in red, and it will show that it's been removed with any comments that were added at the time of removal. All of those details will be included in the export. So now that we've taken a look at the Goalline transaction report, now let's look at what might I see if I log into the StackPay reporting portal. So the StackPay merchant portal contains multiple reports that have some filters and export options as well. There's going to be, in lots of cases there, more details in the exported results. You'll probably find those more beneficial than just viewing them on screen. So we'll start by how do I get to that dashboard? How do I get to my StackPay portal? And you'll go to merchant.mystackpay.com. This is going to allow you to log in. If you need to reset your password, you forgot your password, you can do that option from here. But essentially, you'll log in. When I log in, I see all kinds of different things than you do. Excuse me, which is why I'm going to show you sort of some more screenshots of what things look like for you, because for me, doesn't look exactly the same. So there is a great knowledge base article in our searchable knowledge base that covers how do I view reports. So again, start at that merchant.mystackpay.com. Log in, and when you're logged in, it's going to look a lot like this for you. I'm going to try to zoom this in so that we can take a closer look at sort of where these things are. If you have more than one merchant account, which a lot of Goalline organizations do, between the payment splitting options and multi-sport organizations, or I have a separate bank account for summer camps as I do for regular league play, that kind of thing. If you have more than one merchant account, you'll have a drop down here where you can select the account that you want to be reporting on. And then you'll see your option for what kind of report might I be looking for. The transaction report, the transaction detail report that you would get from here is going to be probably the most common one that you'll want to look at on the kind of day-to-day basis if you do want to look at this on a day-to-day basis. Although I'd argue that all of these details are available through the Goalline transaction details report. And so you can get all the same information from there, but I do always like to kind of reconcile and have something to compare to as well. And of course, as an organization, you got to be on top of those things. So being able to compare these reports is always a good thing. So when you're in here, you're going to select your date range as well. And what you'll find here is the same thing that we do on the Goalline system, where the date range will default to the first day of the current month to the current day. And so if you're looking for transactions that occurred beyond the first day of the current month, you just want to make sure that you open up that date range to search on whatever date range it is that you're looking for. Again, going back in time as far as you need to will be fine. Your results here will be paginated as well. I think there's a lot less results that show compared to your Goalline transaction report. I believe it's somewhere around like 25 to 50 transactions that show up all at once. When you click on each one, you're going to see some additional details and some additional things that are relevant to that transaction. One of those things that's going to be relevant to you is going to be that in the detailed report that you can download, it will have the Goalline transaction ID. So in here, this is going to be our StackPay ID. But you might also want to just compare and make sure that you have a transaction here for all of the transactions that you have in Goalline. So the transaction ID from Goalline will be in the exported report, and some additional details. We have some plans to send back and forth some more additional details, essentially to make it a little bit more similar to the experience that you would have reporting on your PayPal activity reports from before. So we have a lot of organizations that are used to being able to see the program name that was registered for in their merchant account. The StackPay portal right now isn't getting that information. It's getting the transaction details, but not necessarily what they registered for. And so that is something that will be coming in the near future here and would be included in the CSV that you download. So the status that you see here, there's two different things that we see here. We see a type and we see a description. And with those statuses, you're going to see something that may be pending or that it's been completed. It will also show you failed transactions as well. So if you wanted to see transactions like somebody did try to register, submitted their payment, but it was failed, then that's going to be something that you would see as the description. You would see that it was declined. It was, a credit card was declined or a bank payment failed. If you're in the US, you can do ACH payments, and those would all be kind of listed in here as well, so you know how did they pay. The deposit detail report is your batch report. And the deposit detail report, really, what you're going to see is a batch ID number, the number of transactions included, the total amount. And then you can download each one of these batch detail reports. The batch ID number is going to call back, and that's what we're going to see in the goal line transaction report. So if I come back over here, the goal line transaction report will show that batch number as soon as it exists in StackPay. And then once that happens, it will also show the deposit time for when that batch was actually sent over to your bank account. When you click to download it, you will download a CSV file that will contain each transaction included in that batch. So in these cases here, we've got over 1,000, 1,100, 1,500 here. So you would see 1,100 lines in this batch detail report so that you can see a line for each of those transactions with those basic details, the StackPay transaction ID and so on. So your reconciliation report, I think what's really important to note about this is that this should match what you saw as a deposit in your bank. So when we're taking a look at the bank deposits, you're going to see you have your transaction report from Goalline, you've got your deposit detail and reconciliation report from StackPay, and then you've got a bank statement that shows you deposits that have been sent to your bank. So what else should we see that matches up here? So the StackPay net amount that we show you in Goalline should match the net amount that you see when you're looking at these reports here. So if you see there's a gross amount, a fee, and a net, what you see in the Goalline report should be exactly the same as what you see in the StackPay transaction detail report. Your deposit detail, as I just said, should be exactly what you saw in your bank account. And if you were looking at your Goalline transaction report and you totaled up how many transactions had that batch ID, it should also end up being the same number. That's also going to include refunds that may have been issued during that period. So where might you see differences if you're only looking at amounts that you've received in your transaction report? For example, if I'm only looking at payments that I got through registrations, but I'm not looking at any refunds that may have been issued during that same period, there may be a difference between what I see in transactions versus the amount that ended up being batched into my account. So differences may occur in those reports if you've provided refunds. There have been a lot of questions about this as well. You are able to refund and go into a negative balance. And the thing that's just important to keep a note of there is that if you are in a negative balance, after a while, we're going to send you an invoice and say, hey, there's a negative balance in your StackPay account. Let's bring that up to zero. But let's assume that it's not like that for very long, and you start taking registration funds in again. By the time you see your next batch, your batch is going to be all the payments you took minus the negative balance that you already had in the account. And so maybe you took $1,000, but your batch was only $200. And that's because maybe there was a negative $800 of refunds that had been done. So your Goalline transaction report, sorry, wrong screen. Your Goalline transaction report, even if it's a refund, you would see the batch number that it's going to be shown in. And your batch detail report and your reconciliation report over here is also going to show those refunds. So this transaction, these 1,100 transactions, might be mostly payments and a few refunds. And so that's just important to take into account. The dollars that have come into your organization minus any refunds that you've issued is what you can expect your batch to be for those given date ranges. And you're always going to have to look at the batch ID. It is a daily batching system, but there is a bit of a lag. For most of the folks on the call today or in today's webinar being in Canada, you may find that the batch deposit time shows up in StackPay before you see the deposit in your bank account. So there can be a lag there, but it's generally, if it says it when it's 6 in the morning in your StackPay merchant account, you'll see it that day, but maybe not directly at 6 o'clock in the morning. So there does tend to be a small lag if it is going to a Canadian bank account. So yeah, the processing activity report in StackPay, your transaction report is going to match your transaction report in Goalline, and your batch report should also match up if you sort and search by that batch ID in both places. So that actually covers how do we report on our registrations. So just a quick recap, we'll go back out and start at people here because almost everything we need in Goalline is going to be at the people section here. So I'm going to create my forms and make sure that I have a really nice program breakdown that lets my reporting get as specific as I want it to. And then I'm going to start reporting by using Find Athletes or Find Players or Find Coaches, whatever person type it is. When I come in here, a couple little things to just always remember. If you want to see additional details, check to show additional details, select the form you want and the date range for which you want to see those transactions or registrations. If you do this on kind of a rolling basis, you don't always have to do the little trick that I do to go and just open up your date range. Maybe you want to see it week by week and kind of take a look at it that way. You'll select your payment categories. Let me just go here and see if I've got a nice big one. There we go. So this is what a lot of your program breakdowns are going to look like. So if you offer those installment options, you're going to see each and every one of those. So maybe I only want to talk to people or look at people who signed up for a June installment, or maybe I want to look at everyone who registered for that whole program. So this is the kind of program breakdown that you'll want to get yourself to so that your reporting is nice and easy. So we'll go back in time here and we'll search on that one because I think that's lots of programs. I'm hoping that I've got registrations there. So we'll search all there. And when we search the athletes, again, I'm going to see that nice summary, the overall summary, the detailed breakdown of each program, and how many people registered, how many people owe me money, and then the actual detailed breakdown of the individuals who have registered. So that is going to lead us to what can I do now that registrations have happened? So not only do you need to report on things, but there's going to be other, other things that you want to do. You want to build rosters, you want to communicate, you might need to record a payment. Maybe they didn't pay online, or maybe they've withdrawn and you need to provide a refund. So we talked about the fact that I can export this and I can email from this, but I can also go in and view these players. A trick that not everybody knows you can do, because there were years actually where you couldn't do this. So I'm going to show again. If I right click on the edit, I can open it in a new tab. Anybody who's ever seen me working knows that I like to have about 17,000 tabs open at the same time. So it's nice that I can open that up without having to get away from my search results. My search results are still here, and my player that I wanted to look at is right here. So when I look at this, I can see now this is a much older registration, so I had to click to show that older registration. But now that I see it here, I can see that it's still unpaid, and I can click in and record payments for anything that I might want to record payments for. If I have a payment that I have received and I want to provide a refund, let's see, this person's just never paid me ever. So yeah, I guess, let's see here, if I record a payment. When I record a payment, there's some default stuff. It's going to assume that I'm recording the whole payment, but I don't necessarily have to record the whole payment. It can be partial. I can put in what payment type it was received in and who paid it. This is going to contain the name of the player and any parent that may be in the profile, but I can also say other and just type in the name, and I can put in my comments, check 1, 2, 3, or, e-transfer 4, 5, 6, whatever makes sense to you, and then record that payment. One just sort of tip as an organization to make sure that you have a policy for those kinds of things. This came up in a training session I did recently, just, a side conversation on let's get some consistency with how we record these payments, or put notes on refunds or put notes on removed registrations. It's great when you as an organization can have a quick policy that says if you're going to record a payment, here are the details you must include in your comment. These details will be seen in that transaction details report, and they'll also be seen here on the registration records that we see in that profile. And it could be really important someday down the road that this detail was in there correctly. So little conventions that you may want to sort of develop a policy about as an organization. So you'd record your payment there. I'm just going to record my payment really quickly here. Now this form is really old, but that's okay. I just wanted it to be paid. So so I paid this one portion of this here. And now that I've done that, I can refund it. So what you're going to see is I can refund anything that's been paid, but it may say mark refunded like this one does, or it may say refund. When it says mark refunded, there's going to be some text on the screen that just reminds you that no funds are actually being transferred. Marking it refunded is getting your records in Goalline to reflect the reality that you wrote them a check to refund, or that they maybe got a discount as a refund, or whatever it is that maybe is part of your comment here. So you're not transferring money. When it says mark refunded, the assumption is you have issued that refund outside of the Goalline system, either manually by check or cash, or you are able to go into, and StackPay does have this option, and I know PayPal did as well. So if you transitioned from PayPal and have a refund to perform from a PayPal transaction from last year, you can go into PayPal and refund, or go into StackPay and refund, or issue a check for a refund, and then mark the refund here. That will make sure that your transaction details report is up to date with the fact that this is not still paid, it's actually been refunded. And it's really just to make sure that your registration reports and your transaction reports are reflecting the reality of any given player situation. So after registration has occurred, you may need to record payments or provide refunds. If it says refund, it will actually refund. So if it was processed through StackPay last week and they've withdrawn or changed their mind, if you click refund, it will process the refund back onto their method of payment. So if they paid by credit card or by ACH payment, it will return their funds that way. Some other things that are fairly obvious in here that we may need to do from time to time is to be able to view the information or remove the information. So there's a few things we can do here. So I'll start at the top and review some of these buttons. So resending the confirmation email is exactly what it says. The confirmation email does get sent out at the time of registration, but maybe they made a typo in their email address, you've corrected it, and now you want to resend that confirmation. The change person option is only going to work for you if there is a player in the system, or a coach, if it happens to be a coach, that has a name and date of birth, or at least a first and last name that could be a duplicate. So AV test doesn't have a potential duplicate in Goalline. So when I click to change person, I can't do that. But if I had, multiple AV tests with all different birth dates, I might have change person with an option to move it to a different person's profile because a record may have accidentally been created as a duplicate. Down below, I can view registration policies. This lets me see what the policies on this form were at the time of their registration. View registration data provides for me all of the information that they provided on step 1 of the registration form. Usually my demo sites don't ask for a lot of information, but this registration data would be all of those questions that you may have asked, including any additional questions that you asked as extra questions to ask the player. The option to remove the registration record is going to show for all of these. You will have to put in a comment in order to remove it, and that comment will show in the transaction details report. Clicking to remove it does not refund it. So if you also need to perform a refund, you should do that first. But the remove button makes it so that when I search for my summer camps, this person's registration will no longer show up as someone who registered for my summer camp. So it's essentially erasing that particular part of it. If you had transactions that were paid for online, you will also have a change program button. None of mine here do, unfortunately, so I can't show you that. But that would let you correct somebody's registration program. If I signed up for week 4, but I meant to sign up for week 3, change program would let you make that correction, and any balance due would be available for them to pay in the registration account, or you would be able to refund. So change program is something that you would see if there was an online unpaid registration that you need to make a correction to. We just talked about refunds. And then the last thing that we'll talk about really briefly here is what can the registrant do once they have registered. So obviously they're going to wait and be assigned to teams and participate and stuff. But they may also have payments that they need to, let me see here. Sorry, this is with my shopping cart on here. So this one. Sorry. With the registration account, you can go to your transactions and payments tab. So this is me as a parent or as a player, as the registrant myself, and I will see all of the registrations. I can get my receipts. I can do the same. I can view the policies that I agreed to. Anything that's not paid, if I'm allowed to, I can click to make a payment, and this is going to let me actually submit my credit card information and actually pay. If you do have upcoming installment payments, and this is a brand new feature that we are going to be sending some information about over email in the near future here, is that if I have upcoming registration payments that are due in the future, I will now have an update button here as well. So if I signed up for these installment plans as, using my Visa ending in 1234, but now that card is expired or I got a new card for whatever reason, I will have an option now with StackPay only to go and click to update and change the credit card information that is going to be used for those upcoming transactions, which is a feature that I think has been a long time coming for a lot of folks because it lets them deal with things like expired or closed cards and things like that. Or I use my Visa, but I want to change it to my MasterCard or my husband's card or this, that, and the other. So the update payment option is available now for any StackPay installment plans that have future dated installments. And it works very similar to the payment screen itself, where they just click to update, enter your details, and click to submit. Donna, that's a great question. Can a parent make an earlier or partial payment on a pre-scheduled payment? Not at this time. So when it comes to recurring installments, the information has already been sent off to be processed in the future on that due date. And therefore, I can't click to make a payment if the payment is still scheduled to happen. There is an option, however, in your admin view, when you go to view this person's profile, if there was an upcoming payment, I can click to cancel it. So the example there, and this again has come up a lot, if I call you up and say, hey, Donna, that credit card that's on file, it's not going to go through, or I want to pay by check instead. You can click to cancel my upcoming payment. It doesn't take away the registration, but it stops the automatic scheduled payment from being processed on the original payment method that was used. So if that's the case, if they want to, pay a completely different way, you can cancel the payment. They would have to let you know that they want to do that. But the update option, they don't have to let you know. All they have to do is click to update it, and it will still happen on the scheduled date, but they can change the method of payment that they used. So hopefully that helps out with a lot of the different scenarios that you guys run across. So that actually covers today's webinar, and I think I did it in time this time, so that's fantastic. So if there are any questions or anything, I'll stick around in the chat for a little bit here, and any additional questions or features that you saw today that you're not sure if you have access to, feel free to reach out to support or to me there, and get some more information on those. And I look forward to telling you guys about our new next webinars that we'll be announcing maybe in the next week or so. Thanks so much for coming, guys. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.